We're going live.
Still not seeing.
And I think we are live now.
I don't see it.
Me neither, but now it's coming. Okay, we're going live.
Still not seeing.
And yes, we are live.
We are live?
Yes.
Okay. I can't see it here. Yes, now I see it. Okay. Hello, I warmly welcome you to our 15th webinar by the Academy of Space Renaissance International. My name is Sabina Heinz and I'm the person responsible for our webinar series, and I'm really happy that on this 21st of March you have come to join us. And so our today's topic is transterrestrialism in this Renaissance and its importance for today's space philosophy. And for this, we have a special guest, Dr. Marie-Luise Heuser. Hello and welcome. Hello. We also have another guest, Alberto Cavallo. Welcome. We are really happy that you join us.
Thank you.
And and of course, Adriano Ottino, our vice president, and he is one of the founders of the SRI and the former president of our society. Welcome, Adriano.
Hello.
And I also welcome friends from Austria. Hello, Werner. Anne Johnson from Clemson in South Carolina. Ivan Tiffany from SRI too, and from Iowa, USA, and Ankita Sharma from Sweden. Hello and welcome. I would like to introduce our guest. Dr. Marie-Luise Heuser is philosopher and university lecturer at the University of Düsseldorf, Stuttgart, Heidelberg, and Brunswick. Most recently at the Institute of Space Systems at the Technical University of Brunswick or Braunschweig. And she is the executive director of the Society for Space Culture and head of the Space and Culture Department in the German Aerospace Society, DGLR. And her main research interests are the philosophy of space travel since antiquity, space theories, philosophy of nature, art and technology, metaphysics, ontology, and anthropology. Marie-Luise is head of the Space Philosophy Laboratory at Space Renaissance Academy. And our second guest is Alberto Cavallo. Also both, as well Marie-Luise and Alberto are members of the SRI and in the head of the SRI. Alberto Cavallo is another co-founder of the Space Renaissance International. So Space Renaissance was founded as Space Renaissance Initiatives in 2008. And he graduated in electrical engineering at Politecnico di Torino and has a 35-year experience in design and installation of industrial, electrical, and control systems in automotive factories and power generation plants with the Fiat Group, and more recently petrochemical, oil and gas and fertilizers with Mer Technimont. He has a long-time interest in philosophy, Western and Eastern, as well as expansion of civilization into outer space. He manages the website
Eurinome.
Say it again?
Eurinome.
Ah, yeah. Okay, this side. So, Marie-Luise and Alberto, the stage is yours. We are really curious to listen to your lecture. And also, before we start, welcome Bernard. He's entering just in this very moment. He's our president. Welcome Bernard. We will start the show now. Okay, you can start, Marie-Luise.
Okay, hello everybody. It is a pleasure for me to be with you. And I begin with my presentation. I think it's this one.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
And can you make a full screen? Ja, genau. Thank
Ist
you.
richtig? All right.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, the title of my presentation is Transterrestrialism in the Renaissance. Moment, muss ich aber mal my pictures here. I cannot read my own slides. So, the title of my presentation is Transterrestrialism in the Renaissance and its importance for today's space philosophy. My name is Marie-Luise Heuser, and I'm from the Space Culture Society. Oh nee, das geht nicht. Moment. So. So I think now I have the, yes, okay, now it's perfect. Philosophical history of space flight since antiquity. Space travel in the classical history of philosophy since antiquity. It may be surprising that long before the emergence of technical space travel was not only a topic in myth or in the history of literature, but also in the classical history of philosophy. Since 2002, I have opened up this field of research and have been able to make some interesting discoveries. Why has this not been discovered earlier, even though generations have been researching the history of philosophy? The answer is perhaps that historians of philosophy who deal with the classical history of philosophy are usually not space experts. Moreover, space skepticism prevails in contemporary Western philosophy. Conversely, space experts do not usually concern themselves with the history of classical philosophy. I'm pleased that Space Renaissance International has created a philosophy laboratory to further develop this new area of research, and that I can work in collaboration with Adriano Autino and others on a space philosophy for the future. Here is a brief outline of my talk. My lecture. The first part is a historical part, the history of classical philosophy of spaceflight. With the topic's brief overview of the history of classical philosophy of spaceflight, Renaissance as an important landmark of this development, Giordano Bruno's philosophy of spaceflight with the wings of the spirit, and history of Bruno's impact since the 17th century, and on Schelling, the 1920s, Plessner, Anders, Bloomberg. The second part is a systematic part. I try to give a draft for a philosophy for the multiplanetary species with the topics transterrestrialism as understood as transgression of the earthly and of earthly bound categories of thought, then the plurality of worlds, the transterrestrial metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, anthropology, philosophy of nature, art, technology, and politics, then philosophy of emergence, self-organization, negentropic physics, à la Erwin Schrödinger oder following Erwin Schrödinger, creativity, freedom, and utopias. Then my closing words, make space, not war. This said Adriano for some days, or I think 2 weeks ago. And I bring a quote from Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who had a similar idea. Okay, this is a brief overview of the history of space philosophy. the classical the history of classical space philosophy. Prehistory artifacts are before, for example, sun carrier, the sun carrier of Trantholm skyship, the skyship on the sky disk of Nebra. Then you have ancient myths, you have ancient philosophies, especially Plato and Neoplatonism. The Middle Ages, especially Neoplatonic currents of thought and scholasticism. In the Renaissance, you have the great transterrestrialism from Nicolaus of Cusa, Copernicus, over Giordano Bruno to Johannes Kepler. And in early modern times, the science fiction of the 17th century is important. In the Enlightenment, you have Kant's natural history, and especially his philosophy of the sublime, and Condorcet's philosophy of progress. Then there is the epoch of idealism and romanticism, especially Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling, the romantic nature research and art. Then the Russian cosmism, extraterrestrial suprematism and futurism, especially Tsiolkovsky and Malevich. And last but not least, philosophical anthropology of the 1920s with Helmut Plessner and Max Scheler, and the astronoetics by Hans Blumberg. Some philosophers, here you see some philosophers of the cosmic anthropology: Plato, Johannes Scotus Eriugena, Nikolaus von Kues, Pico della Mirandola, Giordano Bruno, Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph von Schelling, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, Max Scheler, Helmut Plessner, Günther Anders, and Hans Blumberg. I'll give you only some slides, a bit an overview to this history. I begin with a projection of human locomotion technology in the sky. Here on the left side, you have the sky thing von Nebra with a ship here on below, and on the other side, the sun sky of Trantholm. Both are from the bronze time. In antiquity, we have two main philosophers and philosophical currents. Plato points upwards to the heaven of ideas, and Aristotle points to the sensible earth. This is a detail from Raphael's School of Athens from 1511. Plato points upwards to the heaven of ideas, means that he was of the opinion that real objects are constituted by primordial ideas, concepts, forms, regularities, and Aristotle was of the opinion that you could only take up that what is sensually presenting you, and you can only order this in with your thought categories like substance and accidents and cause and effect and so on, but you are not able to look in the inner side of nature, the constitutional process of nature. I could find the references to space travel in Plato, not primarily in his doctrine of ideas or in his doctrine of state. that is in his Politeia or De Republica, as one might assume, also not in his natural philosophy, the Timaeus, but primarily in his doctrine of the soul. Here you have a summarize of Plato's doctrine of the soul. Plato's doctrine of the soul is, in my opinion, the core of philosophical space travel with wings of the spirit in the long classical history of philosophy. The human soul has the ability to detach from the given. Latin, this is called abstrahere, and the ability to create new worlds. The world soul is a principle of self-organization of nature. In later times, you have there the concepts of negentropic and monadology from Leibniz and from Cantor, of Cantor. The soul is transfinite. It can transcend finite systems. Therefore, a transfinite is actual and not merely potentially infinite. This teaching of Plato influenced not only Renaissance philosophers and Schelling, but also the famous mathematician and founder of finite set theory in the 19th century, Georg Cantor, who was very fascinated of Nicolaus von Kues and Giordano Bruno's philosophy. And here you have a little look on this concept of Georg Cantor. I think it could could illustrate well what is mean with the transfinite. Sorry. The first generation principle has, as a result, only the potentially infinite, like the natural numbers, also 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And when you put this whole potential infinite to one number, then you use the second generation principle. And this number is an actual infinite number, a transfinite number. Georg Cantor tried to conceptualize mathematics for the creation of new concepts, new kinds, or new regularities, or organic mathematics, how he called it. I think this is interesting also for the question of transhumanism. Do machines have a soul, a transfinite soul? Here you see a picture of this of the sky chariot, Plato's sky chariot, flies through the sky and beyond with the wings of the soul are possible with this myth of Plato's sky chariot. And he wrote, let it be compared to the combined power of a winged team and its driver. It is perfect and feathered. It floats in the ether and governs the whole world. But if its wings are damaged, it drifts until it clings to something solid in which it takes up residence. You have here the concepts of soul, eros, beauty, poetry, mania. You can characterize these topics as the libidinous energies of humanity. And I think it can be shown that it was the libidinous energy of mankind described by Plato that historically led to space travel. And not only the ratio and not only rational concepts. The Platonic doctrine of the soul in the Renaissance space philosophy is found especially by Giordano Bruno. He wrote, "It is a spirit that animates me and breathes a sensation into my chest that makes my shoulders grow wings and in noble order inflames my heart for the pre-drawn goal." The same Platonism can be found in German Idealism, especially in Schelling's philosophy, in Romanticism, and in the so-called enthusiasm of the early space movement in the 1920s, or in 1920s Germany. Here is a first systematic result of this doctrine of the soul. For today's space travel, it is, in my opinion, important to include the cultural dimensions, i.e. Poetry, visual arts, music, but it cannot be about a mere instrumentalization for space travel. Philosophy would then become mere ideology, and the art would become the merely pleasing accessory, the ornament, the accompanying illustration. It should rather be a matter of enlivening the inner forces of awakening an enthusiasm coming from within, of letting wings grow, and generally of strengthening the visionary power and creativity in order to be able to look beyond the small, sensually given environment and to take off. I come now to the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages was dominated by the Aristotelian cosmology. You can here see a picture of Nicolas of Orem from his book Livre du ciel et du monde. And I think you can very nice see here what was the Aristotelian cosmology of the Middle Ages. The sublunar sphere, also the sphere below the moon sphere, the sublunar sphere was separated from the supralunar sphere. The supralunar sphere is heavenly, means heavenly spheres. And this area is perfect, eternal, immutable, ethereal, and has only the quintessentia as a substance, and is a sacral sphere. It is forbidden, and it is not possible for men to get there, and it is only the abode of the angels. And the sublunar sphere is the earthly area, and this is an area which is imperfect, unreliable, transient, and here you see birth and death, and this is the earthly vale of tears. And all longing is went to the supralunar sphere, of course. Because in the Middle Ages, only angels can fly in space. Angels were thought of as intermediate beings and mediators between the divine and the human. And possible was also the Christian essence and descents, like here in Jacob's Dream of the Ladder, the famous story in the Bible. Then you have the Ascension and Gothic cathedrals, which show light, lightness, weightlessness, and striving for the infinite. What happened now in the Renaissance, the great epoch of the Renaissance, relating to space travel philosophy? I think the main change in the revolution was that the philosophers went from the visual to the habitual. Around 1600, extraterrestrial space was made physical, accessible to mankind for the first time, albeit initially only in cognitive and imaginative terms. The mere visual reference to the heavens from a fixed terrestrial vantage point gave way to a motive of flight and travel into the sky. The view from the safe ground to the stars is now no longer the only access to the celestial bodies, but is supplemented by an exploration by means of virtual space travel. I think this is the main point here, that the view from the safe ground to the stars, the observation, is now no longer the only access to the celestial bodies, but is supplemented by an exploration by means of virtual space travel. There is a real movement. There's sort of real movement, not only that look not only to the sky. This happens not only in an outstanding way in the philosophy of Giordano Bruno, especially in his 8-volume work, the Immenso, from 1591, which is partly written in poetry. I think it's also important, it's partly written in poetry and partly in prose, but also in the work Somnium, in a Latin Dream, which Johannes Kepler started shortly afterwards as a student at the University of Tübingen in 1593. Somnium contains, besides a dreamed moon journey, which constitutes the narration, in the much more extensive notes, real scientifically formulated first lunar astronomy. That means an astronomy conceived from the fictional standpoint of the moon. I think you can try the hypothesis that Kepler was very much inspired by Giordano Bruno, because it is known now, after some research works also in Spain, that Kepler had read very closely the works of Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno's philosophy of space flight. At the beginning of 2000, I was able to make a beautiful discovery. In the Renaissance period, Giordano Bruno, especially in his work, the Immenso of 1591, outlined what was probably the first philosophy of space travel. With the wings of the spirit, he undertook journeys to the moon and other celestial bodies, conducted thought experiments on planetary perspective, and questioned the reasons for man's ability to overcome limited horizons. According to him, man's desire to leave the earth is founded in man's dual nature. Although he has a limited body, he has an unlimited mind. Thus, man is a border crosser between the finite and the infinite, and can thus transcend boundaries again and again. Giordano Bruno was a minstrel of the universe, in which he assumed an unlimited number of solar systems with living beings. Here you have two of my publications, Transterrestrialism in the Renaissance, Nikolaus von Pusch, Giordano Bruno, and Johannes Kepler, and Raum Ontology and Space Travel about 1600 and about 1900. Giordano Bruno's late Latin work, published in Frankfurt, in Germany, 1591, is a very big work with 3 volumes. The first volume is De Monad, Numero et Figura Liber Consequens Quinque. The De Monad. This is the lecture, the doctrine about singularities. Today, you would characterize this monads as singularities, as singularity points of self-organization. This doctrine of Bruno was accepted by, was further developed by Leibniz, and later in the 19th century by Georg Cantor. His transfinite set theory I presented in the first slides. Then the second volume was about the minimo, magnum et mensura. This was the work which was especially influencing, has influenced especially, Johannes Kepler. And then the 3 volume is De Innumerabilibus Immenso et Infigurabili, Soi de Universo et Mundus Libri Octi. Only this volume 3 has 8 books as a Libri Octo. It is a very great work here. And this work was dedicated to Principem Enricum Julium Brunsuicensium et Luneburgensium Lucem. And this was the prince of the Julium in Braunschweig, where I had my position at the university, and we have in mind to make to organize a conference there to appreciate this very great work of Bruno. The first German translation of the Immenso, 8 books, come 1999 by Erika Rojas, as a very late point. Okay, the Renaissance is a breaking out of the closed system of the Middle Ages. Here you have a quote from Bruno: the fearless one divides the infinite space with his wings, rises, and no rumor causes me to bump into orbits that error has erected as true from a false beginning, so that the fiction encloses us like a real dungeon, as if everything was surrounded by diamond balls. You remember the picture of the Middle Age cosmology, I think. And then he wrote further: there can be an infinite number of things come into existence in this, come into existence, they are not there, but they come into existence in this great space, and yet they think this world here is enough. As already for Giordano Bruno, one word was not enough. And here on the right side, you see a woodcut from a book from the 1920s. This was the area of the space rocket enthusiasm in Germany. Giordano Bruno conceptualized a space flight with wings of the spirit. Here you have another quote: can you get there with the wings of the spirit? Where to go the feet do not carry us? Well then, first of all, imagine, if you don't want to reveal that it really is. I also say, invent you leave the earth and fly straight to the near moon. Now say, when you fly to the top, if one can still speak of above, then no, then not a larger part of the Earth becomes visible, and doesn't the horizon just keep widening? And here this drawing is also from the book the Immenso. It's a very interesting drawing. I could not explain it here. I have not the time for this. Another point was that he postulated or proposed the exploring of other worlds, and this exploring is combined with change of perspectives. If you can move in thought, he wrote, if you can move in thought, then go to the places where your feet do not carry you. Go to the distant stars and get to know all their worlds. They consist of the same substances, and you can see Earth and Sun. If you could leave our world here to be the inhabitant of another sun, then our sun is not bigger there than here for us. And you can see the planets orbiting them, not even a small point anymore. I hope the translation was right. Okay, then here is another important point of Giordano Bruno's space philosophy, this anthropology of space flight. He looked to the causes why men have the ability and also the longing to transcend finite systems. And he came to the conclusion, man is a border crosser between the physical and the spiritual, the finite and the infinite, the local and the universal, the transient and the eternal. And this antinomies have as a result the desiring, the desidere, the longing, expectere, and here you see also the effective grounds for the longing for heaven, and that it is that these are effective energies of mankind which go beyond the biosphere. A universe appropriate to the unlimited striving of man is a limitless and creative universe which allows the realization of innumerable possibilities. And from this thought results the concept of the natura naturans from Giordano Bruno. That means the concept of a creative nature. Oh, sorry. Was das denn jetzt? Okay. Nee. Moment. Da ist was falsch gelaufen.
Warst du zu Ende oder noch nicht?
Nee, da ist gerade etwas dazwischen. Seht ihr mich wieder?
Ja, wir sehen dich wieder. We are seeing you, but the presentation is stopped. So you have to share the screen again if you want to go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I had put another thing here. Okay. Nee, was ist denn hier los?
Wieder auf Präsentation starten gehen und dann zu der Folie dann. Oben einfach wieder auf Starten gehen, auf Präsentation starten und dann einfach vorgehen.
Also hier oben sehe ich jetzt uns alle. Entschuldige mal, dass ich das jetzt hier so auf Deutsch mache, aber ich komme jetzt irgendwie komischerweise, was ist denn jetzt passiert? Keine Ahnung.
Du kannst bei Ansicht, kannst du den Bildschirm verändern, oben rechts. I'm sorry, but I have to assist her. Bei Ansicht oben, guck mal, da kannst du die Ansicht verändern. Oben rechts ist ein Icon Ansicht und dann kannst du nebeneinander Sprechermodus machen und das so machen, dass die Galerie rechts ist. Siehst du das?
Ich sehe hier nur die Meetingsteuerung, das heißt, also ich sehe nur in so kleinen Kästchen dich, mich, Alberto, Bernhard Voing und Adriano, sonst sehe ich gar nichts.
Mhm. Kannst du die Präsentation trotzdem noch mal irgendwie starten? Geht das?
Ja.
Ja, und dann geh einfach vor.
Ja, die ist ja schon gestartet, die ist schon gestartet.
Ja, aber dass du wieder auf Vollbildmodus gehst.
Ja, wie komme ich da jetzt rein? Oh,
Da oben links siehst du Vollbildmodus bei dir.
Meinst du jetzt von der PowerPoint-Präsentation?
Ja, genau, du machst bei der PowerPoint.
Ach so, du meinst von der PowerPoint.
Ja,
okay, das ist ja klar, okay.
So.
Okay.
Aktueller Folie kannst du machen, ist egal.
Seht ihr die jetzt?
Ja, jetzt haben wir die erste Folie und jetzt muss
okay, sorry, I don't know what happened here. Okay. Okay. This was Bruno's Anthropology of Spaceflight, and he had, ich mache es mal ein bisschen kleiner. Ich kann nämlich sonst meine eigene Präsentation nicht sehen. So, okay. This Giordano Bruno's anthropology had a forerunner, or yes, a forerunner. I think you can say this by Giovanni Pico della Mirandola. Giovanni Pico della Mirandola was a friend of Marsilio Ficino, and Marsilio Ficino had founded the famous Platonist Academy in Florence, and Mirandola wrote a very important text about the dignity of man, 1586, and he postulated free movement and the free movement and self-determination of human beings. Here you have the quote: "We have not given you a certain," also mit we, he meant God. "We have not given you a certain residence, nor a certain face, nor a special gift, O Adam and Eva, so that you may have and possess any residence, any face, and all gifts that you surely desire, also according to your will and according to your opinion. We have placed you in the middle of the world, so that from there you may determine for yourself the form in which you wish to live. You are free to degenerate into the underworld of cattle. You are equally free to rise into the higher world of the divine by the determination of your own spirit." Here you have also a space revolution in art with planetary perspectives. And here you see, I think, the four main thinkers of the space philosophy in the Renaissance. This space philosophy begins with Cusanus, so Nikolaus von Kues, a German philosopher near the Rhineland, and he thought of a universe without periphery and center, of an intrinsic divine principle in which humans participate. That means that he was also a bishop, a real Christian man, and for him it was not it was not horrible to think that the Earth is not the only center in the world, because he thought that there is an intrinsic divine principle in which humans participate. And this intrinsic divine principle is a center for all beings in the world, in the whole universe. So that is a center, an intrinsic center, not a center, a local center. Okay, and Copernicus was inspired and influenced by Cusanus, and his famous work I have not to explain here. I think all know this. Then Giordano Bruno was fascinated by Cusanus' philosophy, and he also tried to propagate the new Copernican cosmology or astronomy. And then Johannes Kepler, who also was very fascinated by the philosophy of Nicolaus von Kues, and also by the minimum theory of Giordano Bruno. Okay, transterrestrialism in the Renaissance. The Renaissance as a transitional period from the Middle Ages to modern times was also a time of transterrestrialism par excellence. With the philosophers Nicolaus von Kues, we say in German Nicolaus of Kues, okay, and Giordano Bruno, the natural scientists Nicolaus Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, and Johannes Kepler, as well as the first science fiction authors, Johannes Kepler, Francis Godwin, and John Wilkins, the earthly was exceeded, transformed, and transcended. Geocentrism was replaced by heliocentrism and extended to cosmocentrism, the centering finally abolished in favor of a centerless and boundless universe in which countless self-organizing worlds were assumed, not all of which are visible due to our limited earthly field of vision. The decentering and pluralization of the universe was accompanied by the imagination of extraterrestrial beings that are not comparable to life forms on Earth, according to Nicolaus of Cusa, but have different incompatible characteristics. Rather than populating the universe in imagination with Earth-like forms of life, one thought of diversity, heterogeneity, and multiplicity, worlds that transcended not only what we know, but also our imagination. The transterrestrial perspective also led to the overcoming of anthropocentrism. The view for new things was developed, and more was admitted than what we know. The pluralization and heterogenization was perceived as enrichment and not as frightening. It always remained related to a primordial intrinsic unity, which was now no longer thought of as a logical unity, as in Aristotelian scholasticism, but as a productive ground. Finally, in Renaissance philosophy, the finite earthly object modes of cognition were transformed into infinite ones. Transcendence was drawn into immanence. Henceforth, the Earth was no longer, as it had been in the Middle Ages, the center of the world, towards which all movements and all foundings of meaning were oriented. The cosmological, this is the last one of this slides, the cosmological transterrestrialism, the cosmological transterrestrialism, the cosmological transterrestrialism, I say, I say now, is accompanied by an epistemological transterrestrialism in Nicolaus of Cues. That means by the transgression of given earthly systems of knowledge. According to Cusanus' epistemology, individual systems of knowledge are defined similarly to the individual, biological, species regions, and stellar partial worlds, each by proportional related elements. A knowledge within a system comes about through comparison and finding proportions to what is really known. A transgression of the respective knowledge systems is logically deductive or discursively not possible. Only by means of hypotheses or conjectures, new worlds of knowledge can be opened up. With this epistemology, Cusanus says goodbye to the logically influenced scholasticism of the Middle Ages. Also the main thing is here is that Cusanus said that in a finite, also in given knowledge systems, you can progress with proportional instruments or proportional regularities. But if you want to supersede or to transcend one given knowledge system and to create a new one, then you have to make hypotheses and conjectures, and then you have the possibility to go into new fields of knowledge. Okay, here you have some. Bruno's philosophy had a great impact of the tradition of the classical philosophy on the continent, especially on Johannes Kepler, on his minimum doctrine, and on his science fiction story, Somnium, then on Francis Godwin. This is a very interesting thing, I think, because Francis Godwin was in Oxford when Giordano Bruno held there his famous lecture, and Francis Godwin was therefore inspired by Giordano Bruno. Dann Baruch de Spinoza, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, Gottfried Ephraim Lessing, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. You say you are speaking with me? No. Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling, Georg Cantor, Max Scheler, Helmut Plessner, and Hans Blumberg. They were all influenced by Bruno's philosophy. And here the more modern philosophers like Max Scheler, Helmut Plessner, and Hans Blumberg. Here it is the interesting thing that they're not only were inspired by Giordano Bruno, but they also made themselves space philosophies, and the only ones, I think, in Germany. Here you have two of my works to Kepler and to Cantor, Georg Cantor. And I give you now a short insight in this influence story of Giordano Bruno's philosophy. Johannes Kepler, Somnium, Francis Godwin, The Man in the Moon, John Wilkins, also A Discovery of a World in the Moon, Mathematical Magic, or The Wonders That May Be, Confirmed by Mechanical Geometry, and Cyrano de Bergerac, L'Histoire comique des États et Empire du Soleil, 1662. Here you have a nice picture of The Man in the Moon from Francis Godwin, and here you see that they looked up, that they tried to find a solution for the flying technique. And here you see that here Domingo Gonzalez is flying to the moon with gauzes. In German idealism, it was especially Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph von Schelling who adopted Giordano Bruno's philosophy. The philosopher of German Idealism and Romanticism, Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph von Schelling, took up Bruno's ideas and wrote in 1802 his dialogue with Bruno entitled About the Divine and Natural Principle of Things. He adopted Bruno's metaphysics and universal anthropology, according to which mankind should not remain bound to the earth, but should realize itself as universal, rather dwell in the universe. Here you have a quote of Schelling's Universal Anthropology, which I could find in a lecture, which was not published in that time, but only in later times. Nowadays this was published from his son in the late 1900s. We must, of course, assume that the earth is the source of human beings. We must, of course, assume that the earth is the source of human beings. Why? We do not know that. It goes back to circumstances we do not overlook. But man is not specifically a product of the earth. He is a product of the whole process. Not the earth alone, the whole universe is involved in it, and it out of the earth he is, but not exclusively for them. He is for all these stars. If he appears as a local being, he is not original, he has been localized. How? This must be shown by the sequence. He is, as said, the universal being, and therefore should not, at a certain point, he should dwell in the whole. Our place of residence is in heaven, that is just in the universe, from the shackles of the concrete free. Schelling was also the founder of of the German idealism, but also of Romanticism. And here you see two nice pictures of Caspar David Friedrich
We must
to show this thinking. Here, I think it's the last of this story, the last slide of the story. Russian cosmism and extraterrestrial suprematism. Both Russian cosmism and suprematism were influenced by European Romanticism. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky made the following proposal for an ideal order of life, and I think this is then which come more to that what nowadays is important also for a modern philosophy of space. All people should have an equal right to life, prosperity, and education. In order to be able to realize this humanistic demand, however, the way to space is unavoidable, since resources on Earth are limited. The overpopulation of humanity on Earth also forces us to struggle with gravity and to use celestial space and its riches. Space travel is seen as a necessary consequence of a humanistic economy that should make a good life possible for all people, not just for a small privileged class of people. Sorry, this translation was not so very good. It is an imperative of humanity to open up new resources in order to make further social progress possible. Tsiolkovsky was of the opinion that man should at all costs overcome the Earth's gravity and have at this disposal at least the space of the solar system. As you see, translated by Diepel L, but I think this translation was not so very nice. For more details, you can see my my work or my essay but this is in German, russischer Kosmismus und extraterrestrischer Suprematismus. Here I have only a very short presentation of the systematics. I think we could call this transterrestrialism. This term, transterrestrialism, this term was introduced by me to describe the transgression of the earthly and of earthly bound categories of thought. It implies the Copernican turn as a mode of thinking, also being able to take off mentally, the concept of a plurality of worlds and humanity as a multiplanetary species. A metaphysics of creativity, further developing the philosophies of Plato, Nicolaus von Kues, Bruno, Schelling, and also, I think, Whitehead. Transterrestrial epistemology, further developing Plato, Nicolaus von Kues, Bruno, Schelling. Universal anthropology, Plato, Kues, Bruno, Schelling, Scheler, Plessner, Blumenberg. And the natural philosophy, concepts of emergence, self-organization, negentropic physics, and political philosophy, utopias of freedom.
Okay.
This is my last closing words.
Come to an end. I wanted to, yeah.
Ja, aber dann habe ich schon zu weit. Ja, okay. Closing words. Make space, not war, said Adriano Autino. And I think Adriano has a famous precursor in Tsiolkovsky. Tsiolkovsky's ethical imperative was, for this reason, the true path to perfection consists in not taking anything away from anyone without his consent, not to use violence of any kind, not to violate the freedom and wishes, the freedom and desires of those close to us, unless they threaten us in the same way. Reassure all people, tell them and promise that nothing will be taken away from anyone. There is no need for taking away. If in nature the riches are represented in infinite quantity, then our way to the ideal will be peaceful, happy, and successful. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me here, heuser.uni-düsseldorf.de. Thank you very much.
Okay. Can you stop sharing the screen? Thank you very much. As I understood from Adriano, Alberto wanted to add something before we start the Q&A part. It was far too long. Can you stop sharing the screen, please, Marie-Luise?
Soll ich es einfach ausmachen?
Ja, einfach den Bildschirm, also nicht den Bildschirm, die Präsentation ausmachen. Ja, genau. Okay. So, Alberto, the stage is yours. I have to apologize. It was too long, far too long.
Yes.
No,
Sorry.
it was not.
You come with the space cat, I see.
Yes, it's the cat of Robert Heinlein.
Okay.
Remember the cat that was going through the walls.
No. Alberto.
Okay, thank you very much. No, the presentation was very interesting, and how could I add something to this tonight? I thought of this, and then I remember that when I was a student, and I was studying ancient Greek, I translated as an exercise a very short text about the inhabitants of the moon. So who was this ancient Greek author who was talking about the inhabitants of the moon? Because the ancient Greeks had this conception of space, I mean, from the material point of view of space, that was quite closed, because in the end, they had no idea of multiple worlds or distant planets. Just they had this idea of perfection of the skies, of that it is an ideal world, that it is a regular movement of the planets and of the moon, on the sun, because for most of them the sun was moving, not the earth. And so, but in fact, if we go back to literature instead of philosophy, there is an author in ancient Greece that was maybe the first talking about space travel in a physical world, of course, in a fantastic tale, in a fantastic novel. And he was Lucian of Samosata, who was, in fact, he was not a Greek. He was a Syrian from what was then Syria in Samosata, that is now Samsat in Turkey, but it was in Syria in those times. And he moved, was very ambitious. He moved to the region of the Ionian Sea, to the eastern shore, to what now is Turkey, to study Greek. And he learned Greek so perfectly that he could write and give speeches in perfect style in classical Greek. And we are so lucky that we have still most of his works available, because they were transmitted to us differently from much other ancient literature. So I think he was the first science fiction author that we can remind of. And so it's very interesting for me. I have here an edition, an Italian edition of I think we can, if the automatic system allows me, yes, this is an Italian edition of the book. Of course, you can find an English edition wherever you want, by Lucian of Samosata, The True Story. True Story, it's a joke by himself, because of course it's a fantastic story, not a true story. And it was a way to be ironic towards all the authors of this time, including the philosophers. And he talks about traveling in space in the first part of the book, traveling in space to the moon and even to the sun, because he describes the moon and the sun also to be inhabited, and by alien creatures, not just humans, and describing all these beings that live on the moon, that live on the sun, and even a war between the moon and the sun. He says he took part in this war. They were the moon people were defeated by the sun people, because the sun people made also a wall that stopped the light from the sun to go to the moon. So he knew that the moon is not luminous by itself; it's illuminated by the sun. He knew that, and maybe not many philosophers of this time knew that. And in this war, he was called prisoner, and they did. In the end, when the war finished, they had peace negotiations, and the people of the moon and the sun decided to go together to colonize the morning star, that is the planet Venus. So, and then his story goes on with other things. What I find interesting is that this conception of space travel was present, in fact, in ancient Greeks in literature more than in philosophy. It's true that Lucian was no philosopher, even if he talks a lot about philosophers. He wrote many things, but he had no system of his own. He was just ironic toward many philosophers, and in this book also he talks about them. But for me, it's very interesting to find how in the ancient world there was an author that we can consider the first author of science fiction. And so when in the Renaissance the ancient world was rediscovered, it opened up the mind of the medieval times, and because these ancient people had a very, very open view of the world. In the latest time, in the golden time of the Roman Empire, because when Lucian lived, it was during the greatest emperors of the Roman Empire, Adrian and Antoninus Pius and Marcus Aurelius, who was also a philosopher himself. And in those times, people were more like us in literature. They wanted to be amused by science fiction literature and by fantasy literature. Fantasy not in the sense of modern fantasy, but truly fantastic literature. And at the same time, I also remember that there are other conceptions, not European ones. When I first got interested in philosophy, that was when I was a student, and then I realized that besides Western philosophy, there is Eastern philosophy. And I decided to get interested to learn something about Eastern philosophy, and then I say in years I joined the Eastern philosophy even more than Western, and I found that there are ancient Indian conceptions that are much more advanced than the Western ones and much older. Because it's very interesting that even in the original Buddhist conception, besides Hindu conception, but I will go to Buddhist conception, that is because the Buddhist conception is most rational and most scientific minded. Even it's not precisely possible to locate when this started, but it's for sure, if we consider the Buddha, it's about the same time as the ancient Greeks, because at the same time of the 5th century, 6th century before Christ. But then the works of Buddhist philosophy went on with the main developments. The most important one was for our purpose, the Abhidharma, that is the Buddhist concept, contains many ancient Buddhist conceptions about nature and about the universe. And there you find the ideas that are the most advanced, that were even conceived by Europeans and by Western people until recently, because the Buddhist idea of the universe was that there is a number of universes, of parallel universes, that is in the millions, billions, or even higher numbers. You can say unspeakable numbers of parallel universes. And that these extensions also goes from the past to the future, with cyclic universes starting and finishing, but even contemporarily existing thousand millions, billions of universes. And all these are inhabited not by people, but by sentient beings, but beings that may be not like us. They may be different from us in many things. But we are all sentient beings in all these billions of universes are sentient beings that are based on the same conception, the same mind. And you can, and there is continuity among them all, because you know that in the end, the Buddhist conception of space travel is that you can be reborn on another world. And this is very, very, very natural for them. In modern Buddhism, the Tibetans are the ones that have the best continuity with the ancient Indian philosophy. They have developed it till now. And I can say for a Buddhist master, it's very normal. They studied from the Buddhist tradition that there are so many universes and places to live. And I remember my master I follow him saying that, oh, don't worry about if this planet becomes uninhabitable, because there are plenty of worlds where we can live. And this is part of the conception that is from ancient India, at least 2,000 years ago. This is something, okay, they never developed on their own space travel, the physical space travel, but they had this conception. They never had the Western conception that the sky and the planets are just perfect things that are in the sky and cannot be reached. They never had this. They always considered all the other places in the universe as being like here. exactly the opposite of the position of Aristotle, for instance, of that only the Earth is the place of variation, and the skies are perfect and immutable. They had this conception that all places are places where you can go, and they are all inhabited with people like us. This
can I make a question?
Yes.
And do they try to get there into the sky, or it is or not?
For them, it's possible because you can be reborn everywhere. And for instance, in the Buddhist conception,
No, I mean technical, in technical terms.
In technical ways, no.
Okay.
But by being reborn, yes, it's possible. And if you are a being that is with no limitations like the humans, you can also travel. And by the way, they also have the conception that, for instance, in the Buddhist conception, a Buddha can be present at the same time in several different worlds. And the Buddha we had, the historical Buddha, for instance, Buddha Shakyamuni, now I found in a Buddhist text that he is in another world, somewhere in another universe, teaching again his teachings. Because Buddhism is not is a generic teaching that is always restarts, and with many different masters, because Buddha is not God. Buddha is a sentient being like the others who has reached the awakening and the enlightenment. So there are infinite worlds, infinite Buddhas, infinite, and you could live in any world. They never they never conceived of going there by physical means, but just by translation of your mind. I cannot say soul because it has implications that are not there.
The wings of spirit.
Yes.
With the wings of spirit. Like Giordano Bruno said.
A question here from the audience for Marie-Louise. Werner Grande is asking, are there ideas innate which may force us to transcend into outer space?
I didn't understand the question.
Can
you repeat it? Are there? Mm-hmm.
Ja, und das ist Latein, it's Latin. Idea innate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which may force us to transcend into outer space.
Yes, I think this idea or the idea nate. I think these are the primordial concepts of or the primordial intrinsic principles of the natura naturans and of the creative potentials of humanity. I think this is the universal principle of the dynamics, and insofar the idea as the original picture, or the Urbild in German, of all the phenomena. I hope I had to understand this question.
There's
right.
Immediately a comment from Eric Gotcha, but I would like to ask Alberto, can you put the title of the book you showed into the chat, and I put it into the chat from the YouTube. Eric Gotcha is saying sounds time.
I would also like to indicate another book.
Yeah, genau. Sounds.
I would like, Sabine, I would like to add a small thing to what Marie-Louise just said about the innate ideas that will force us into space. I think that several philosophers talk about that, is the so-called evolutionary impulse, that or even the negentropic struggle of life that Kraft Erike talks about. That is an evolution from the very first living organism up to the intelligent life that is forced some way by nature, by its natural instinct, to overcome the limits of their ecological niche, of their environment, and to expand into a bigger ecological. It happened from the sea to the earth, and some billions of years ago, and it will happen again now from earth to outer space. And I think maybe we can find this principle in several philosophers, Krafft-Erike, Stephen Wolf, and Robert Pirsig too. And so maybe, yes, we can talk about some innate means in internal impulse of the material, of the matter.
Yeah, Eric Gottschalk says sounds tied to quantum theory, where different observers of the same apparent reality have a different perception of the same thing, thus existing in the university simultaneously, is it?
I think this is a question for Cavallo.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Maybe yes. Yes, of course. This idea that different observers see different things. This is a point that is very much in common between modern science, contemporary science, and ancient Buddhist science. And basically, the Buddhist conception is almost exactly the same as the Dalai Lama is constantly saying. You know, the Dalai Lama founded the Mind and Life Institute, for where there are discussions among scientists and Buddhist teachers and Buddhist masters. And he found that himself participating, and he learned a lot about the quantum physics. And he says that quantum physics is very much the same as what Buddhism has always said, that the conception that without the mind, practically the reality depends on the observer. And basically, there is no objective reality, but there is the reality only as seen by the observer.
Yeah, I would like to open the discussion now, but first Bernard had a question, and then we can, I see no more questions in the chat, only a comment from Eric and from infinite potential of David Bohm. This I wanted to add, but now I give you the word, Bernard, and then Adriano. I open the discussion now.
Okay, thank you very much, Sabine. Oh, so do you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Okay, Sabine. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Marie-Luise, for very interesting, and I've learned a lot with your talks about some past philosophers and thinkers. But there is one thing that I think I miss, and it's a concept that we are space traveler in a way. The very simple experiment, which is just to lay down in the field in summer and go in the Milky Way, and then realize that we are traveling on Earth spaceship through space. Did you see that in the writing of previous thinkers, that we are astronauts on spaceship Earth? And also, I mean, the whole point of what is our relation to the cosmos. I was very interested by Alberto Spon, that we have a different point of view, Western, Eastern philosophy. We are much more connected to the cosmos. And the science now tells us that, in fact, the cosmos has traveled to us. The cosmos created the Big Bang, hydrogen, the elements, they are born in the center of stars, and they came to us. So in fact, we are the sons and daughters of the cosmos. So how is there any intuition in the past philosophers of the fact that we have this very strong connection to the cosmos, to the point that the cosmos came and formed us, and also that we are traveling through the cosmos on spaceship Earth. So do you have some resonances in the writing of the philosophers about these 2 points?
Also the first point that the Earth and also mankind is a product of the whole process of the universe. This was a main idea of Schelling, that and that men as humanity, the humanities, or the humans have an insight into the primordial creative process at the beginning of the universe. This we have an insight in this as a philosophical concept. This is the first, and the second, that we went there perhaps with a spaceship. This you can find not since only in the early science fiction it's in Western Europe or in Europe of the 17th century, and then Jules Verne in the 19th century. And Jules Verne was the very important persons also for the first movements to create technical instruments to get there, to get to the universe. And in Germany, you know it, in Peenemünde, 1942, the first rocket had moved to the border of the biosphere, and the whole group in Peenemünde, they had 2 souls in their breast. The one soul was inspired by the whole tradition of philosophy since Romanticism and also the philosophy in the 1920s, and the other soul was influenced by a regressive political party, and this led then to a very destructive process in the war. And you must have all this in the mind, that all the instruments, all the technique also can be used as a war instrument, as war technique. But in the classical philosophy, also by Schelling, you cannot find this an answer to the question how we get there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Indeed, the big duality. Huh? Make love and space, not war. That's what we should say.
Yes. Thank you
very great.
Marie-Luise, thank you very much for mentioning this short statement that not only myself, also was myself and Bernard that we wrote it together. This short article, "Make Space Not War," and yeah, I think it's important. But I took a note during your presentation that when you talk about this word is not enough. I don't remember now exactly who was the philosophers you were quoting. I would say that even now that we have the proof that this word is not enough, because at that time they only could imagine that at a certain point the word would not be enough. But now we have the proof that is not enough. We have a lot of people in the not only in the large society, also in the space community, that don't really think that that expanding into space is our destiny. There are many people that love space, but maybe they don't love it enough to think to live in space, to live outside Earth. So it means that the pre-Copernican philosophy that this is the planet and the only planet is still very, very rooted in our society, and how we have a task, an incredible, strong, hard task to change the general perception of the world, to change the Weltanschauung in favor of an open world. And what is the big point, the main key relevant point of the Renaissance? That the Renaissance opened the concept of the Middle Age, that the world is closed. So the Renaissance opened the world, in fact, in favor of a concept of an open world, and that we are not quite different from the rest of the universe, so we can go. We can live.
Yes, but they had an optimistic view of the world, huh? Because Giordano Bruno and also Nicolaus von Kues thought that if you would have the technique to go there, it would be a livable world, you know. And nowadays we know that we are close to our biosphere because of our bodies. As our bodies are Earth-like, Earth-like, and it is not so easy to live in space, because space is an inhuman place. And this is, I think, this is the cause, or the cause why today philosophy is space. You find in modern philosophy, you find all over the world, I think, a lot of space skepticists, and this space skepticism is grounded in the thought that our bodies are not made for space. And in the early 20s, the really great philosophers, Edmund Husserl and also Martin Heidegger and Hannah Arendt, were the greatest space skepticists. And they have good arguments, especially Hannah Arendt have a good argument. Her argument is that our stature of man would be destroyed when we go to space. But you can criticize this position of Hannah Arendt with Renaissance philosophy, because Edmund Husserl, Martin Heidegger, Hannah Arendt, the current thoughts of phenomenology and fundamental ontology are based on the body, on the concept of the body of men. And with Renaissance philosophy, you have the concept of the infinity of mind, and that you are able to to transcend this finite systems. But it is I think it is a problem that we have that we are border crossers between the finite and the infinite. It is a possibility. We can go. We are the only species on the world in the biosphere who can go beyond the biosphere. But on the other hand, side, we are also
this will,
in this closed world.
It would open a quite other discussion that maybe we will have to do it one of these days.
Yes, I think.
Because
okay.
Oh, sorry.
Perhaps one sentence. I went back in the tradition. I looked in the tradition of philosophy, since the antiquity, and Renaissance philosophy and German Idealism, Romanticism, and so on, because I saw that the space enthusiasm of the 1920s was inspired by this tradition. And I looked for an alternative to this great skepticism in the modern philosophies, you know. And we have to look for an yes, for good principles to counter this widespread
What I would like to just to say, because I don't want to open now this discussion,
okay.
It's really even bigger than the one we just had, that it was long and intense enough, that our problem of us humans, and when I say humans, I mean humans, that we are not yet transhumans and we are not yet posthumans, we are humans. And what I want to say is that our problem, but it's not from one point of view is a problem, from the other point of view is our main characteristic. We are made of flesh and blood, and we feel pain and we feel pleasure. And this is what make us contribute to make us humans, together with our sentient mind and capability to make reasoning and ethics and so on. So what I want to say is that we very much need now a utopia for humans. Then maybe going outside, we will be forced to evolve in something else. And I like to think that we will be more than humans, not that we will be post-humans, because I need to think that we will keep with us our human capabilities of empathy, of compassion, of all these kind of things. And of course, why cannot a completely artificial mind have this endowment? Maybe, why not? Maybe a form of life based on silicium could be human in the sense that I said. Why not? This is another discussion, however. But what I want to say is that because I'm studying these days, I'm studying a little bit the books and the thought of Sir Martin Rees that wrote a lot about astrobiology and this kind of things. And he says that the solar system will be explored by robots, and that maybe humans will go to live there, but maybe post-humans will go there, and maybe a completely electronic form of life, not our form of life. I don't subscribe to this point of view. I'm trying, maybe I will try to start a dialogue, a philosophic dialogue, Platonic dialogue with Sir Martin Rees, countering these concepts, because there are a lot of people that think that we can use space for Earth. So we can take energy in space to feed Earth. We can take asteroid materials to feed Earth. But this is wrong. We cannot continue to increase the pressure inside our first mother planet. We have to go outside and relieve this planet from our burden of our development. And we have to do it to avoid an Holocaust, a giant Holocaust. So what these people don't understand, they think that we have millennia to stay on Earth, to remain on Earth, and they are happy if the demographic growth will invert and we will start to decrease. But if we start to decrease in number, we will have is another way to the civilization to implode.
Yes, I think so too.
So our history of a cultural space is a history of growth. We cannot stop growing in a controlled way, and not in a disordered way, of course. But however, growth is essential.
And you know, as an Italian, you know that in the 19th.
Then I shut up. And it is essential for us humans. We humans of this century and this millennia need to expand, to start expanding into space. So we will do it with the means we have. We will suffer, of course. We will find ways to protect our body and our form, our physiology from the hard conditions of space. We have to build our world outside. Even the analogy of the starship Earth has all the comparison as good and bad, and I will discuss maybe in another time, because there are already too many arguments on this table today.
Okay.
I also wanted to add something, because I think since always humankind had the dream to fly, to go into space, and there do exist already utopian space habitats, and I think it will be more probably that we will settle, if we settle in space, in artificial habitats, because to settle on Moon or on Mars would mean that we live under not on the Earth, under soil. We will not live on the surface of the Moon or of the Mars, because it's, as you said, very unfriendly for humans to live there. So we cannot go out without spacesuit. We cannot see growing plants, only in greenhouses they are experimenting with, and I think it will be more probably that we have space habitats, artificial space habitats, and the Chinese are constructing a space hotel and working on it. And I think I give you right, although I agree with you that we have to find a way to go out into space. But and there do exist a lot of utopies and yeah, concepts how we can do this. But I think it will be very difficult to live on Mars.
Yeah, why not?
It
was never easy.
And you have to see people who go there, even if they are pioneers, but they will live under really harsh conditions, and they will not have the daily life what we are accustomed here. Also they will not go out, they will not have natural environment, art. So that's why we want to bring art into space and to Mars, onto Mars and Moon. But it's very important. You are smiling, Bernard, but I think it is very important, because very often it is thought in the technical feasibility, but we also have to think in literature and culture and art, because it's very important, and we have seen what it makes with us to be enclosed in a house, in a flat during the coronavirus pandemic, and we collectively have lived what it means. If you are in your house, you cannot go out, and imagine you cannot go hiking, do nothing, because you are living under the soil or regolith or whatever, yeah. So and you have not a blue sky and atmosphere. It makes something with you, and you should not underestimate it. So that is really, really harsh.
Yeah, we will bring art and philosophy in our lava tube.
For sure. This is
the alternative of progress is regression, and I fully agree with Adriano that this could only be a horrible scenario. And in Italy and in Germany especially, we had the conservative revolution in the 1930s, and where they tried to go back to nature and to a re-agrarian society, and a regressive society is always, I think, is always a killing society, murdering society, because you cannot have such a lot of people in a closed world, and so I think it is really important to go in space, but I think it's I'm working in this humanities and in philosophy, and it is like it is the philosophers since I think since the early 19th century were this is a regressive philosophy which is focusing to the immediate life world, you know, to the phenomenological accessible immediate life world. This is the principle of this this philosophy in a short sentence. And it is not so easy to deal with this whole philosophical concepts who are space skeptical. You know, I think therefore it is a very important work to give a serious and solidated philosophical ground for a philosophy of space, and I think the only way is to get back and to look where there are where's the tradition where we can bind to and follow and develop it further.
Nice words, and I think outside Earth, yeah, we should close our discussion now and the webinar. I'm really happy that you joined us, and I saw also in the chat there was a lively conversation, and I think people enjoyed our conversation, and I would like to invite you for our next webinar. It will take place, just a second, on the 4th of April. And I'm glad we have Daniela de Paulis with A Single Sky as a guest. She's an artist. And so we have philosophy, art and science. It's a nice mixture. So next week, in 2 weeks, on the 4th of April, Daniela de Paulis will give her lecture. And Marie-Luise and Alberto, thank you for your lectures. And it was really interesting. Adriano, Bernard, thank you for joining us, and also the audience that they stayed so long with us, almost 2 hours, and hope to see you on the 4th of April. Bye.
I think Alberto Carvalho, sorry, I think we have also appreciate Alberto Carvalho's lecture, because he had I think a real important topic, the philosophy of the East, and okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for this.
Oh,
Ciao.
See you.
Thank you very much.